Hello, this is Noah Ripley, and I'm going to be doing my podcast on race about an issue that we all know too well, which is the incident of hate speech on campus that occurred last November. And it's an issue that is especially close to home for me because I am on the Western's track and field team. And Tyson Campbell, the individual who posted the hate speech, was also a member of the track team. And it was interesting to see from one of his teammates' perspective because we did have a meeting after the fact to kind of go over what had happened and kind of discuss potential solutions as well as provide some support for people who, were dealing with those difficulties in whatever forms those had manifested. Which that meeting alone was very interesting. I guess that's probably better saved for another point in time. But first of all, I won't give too much of a background because I think most people know about the majority of the events that took place. And there's a lot of tension going on right now in between the students of Power and Liberation and Bruce Shepard. Bruce Shepard has definitely taken a lot of heat for the way he handled the incident. And that is what I'm going to be talking about first and foremost. So, we all received a series of emails from President Shepard, and what struck me most about the emails was, just the fact that it seemed like he was defending himself the whole time. He gave a pretty detailed outline of where he was when he received a phone call from Belinda informing him about what was posted on Yik Yak. And he just seemed to tread really carefully in how he staged what he had done to kind of to divert a lot of the blame and shift that away from himself, and in a way I think on to Tyson Campbell, which was and while Tyson's actions did warrant action by the president and the university, I just hesitate to think I think in a way we've shifted too much of the burden onto a single person. But I think this was largely due to the culture and the climate, within the whole United States. So recently we've seen a number of different issues on college campuses, such as Yale, and then definitely most notable would be the University of Missouri, where the president actually stepped down after the football team had said they would. The football team said they would go on strike if the president didn't resign, and that instance in particular was due to some similar things, but I think there were definitely a number of actual acts of violence, a lot of discrimination on, off, and around campus that sort of led to this event. So it was definitely a long time coming for the university president to step down, but I think that event in particular was definitely in the back of Bruce Shepard's mind when he was typing that email, when he was creating a task force that was going to address the level of threat on campus and within his actions to pursue Campbell as best he could. And I don't think that that's necessarily bad, but I don't know, I just got a bad feeling in my stomach when I was reading this email, and you could just tell it was very evident that he was trying to save some face, which I don't necessarily think he should have to. He acted in these ways, and he's always definitely been a proponent of diversity, whether you want to use that word or not. That's at least what he's claimed to be, and he seems like he's done a good job with that. So I don't think he needs to at this point save his face, although definitely plenty of backlash in the wake of the events, and especially with the students of Power and Liberation, as well as other matters on campus. But now I kind of wanted to transition into one of the previous discussions we'd had in class, and we were talking about the movie that we'd watched in class, and I remember asking someone, "What do you mean by they?" Because there were several comments that kind of inferred, that they had put these systems into place. They had created these ways of doing things that discriminated and that caused a lot of issues. And the reason I asked that was because of Gilroy, and that's who I wanted to connect to this whole argument. And Gilroy is sensitive to the word privilege. He's sort of apprehensive in using the term because we use it as a static term. It's I have privilege, and that's not going to change necessarily because I'm a white male. I was born a white male. I was born with privilege. That is a static thing, and it just creates this sort of idea that we're not actually in control of our privilege. That I benefited from events outside of my control, which isn't necessarily true, because as we walk around exercising privilege, we are in fact aiding and abetting it even furthermore. And I wanted to connect this to the events on campus at Western in a couple of different ways. We can say we can use the word they when describing Tyson Campbell, and when describing Bruce Shepard. And I just think we should be very careful when doing that. Do I think Tyson Campbell deserves most of the blame? Absolutely. He did something really unspeakable and very, very unfortunate, and obviously he has to stand up for his own actions. But with that in mind, the system that acted as the medium for him saying and doing these things is definitely a huge part of the problem. Yik Yak is an online social media site that's supposed to be completely anonymous, and he was acting, I guess, in good faith that it would stay that way. And it's hard to address these issues because I can't necessarily say Yik Yak shouldn't exist, but I think it's the climate that is around Yik Yak, and I think part of the conversation was also on Reddit. And these kinds of sites definitely add to some of these different issues. And the second place I wanted to talk about they was in terms of Bruce Shepard. I think a lot of times we look to our leaders as people who should definitely be in the forefront of helping stop some of these issues, mediating certain problems and whatnot. And that's great. That's definitely a leader's job to do, and that's their position that they are assigned to. But I think by doing that, we can fall into the trap that it's again outside of our control. In the case of the University of Missouri students, there was definitely some celebration when the president finally stepped down. But I don't think that the president necessarily intended for many of those events to happen on campus. I would certainly hope not. I just think we need to be careful in the way we go about sort of taking these issues and putting them on the higher ups when a lot of it is the culture we've created. And I wish I could give a better solution to the problem. But I don't necessarily think that creating these scapegoats is the appropriate way to do so. And also another, going off of Gilroy once more, I think it entrenches these binaries a little deeper into our society. When we do emphasize those secondary parties, being Tyson and being we'll use the University of Missouri president as an example, placing too much of the blame on those individuals and not enough on the blame of the culture that we have helped create, and we just like acting as privilege is a static issue that we go about and we just, by not doing anything, we were making the problems much worse. So I hope I was able to shed at least some light on these issues. I know I've definitely struggled with them over the past few months, and I would absolutely love to keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening.